Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jumpstart Monday. This is Michael Virardi. It's the 14th of March, and you are here watching Power Skills. It's a series of 6 power skills with 6 amazing professionals. And this week, I'm so happy to present my great friend and professor at University College London, Richard Pettinger, who's a person that I truly admire, not only as a professional, who I believe is one of a very few unique in the way he teaches, but he's also a great human being. And our topic for today, our power skill for today, what most people call soft skill, is curiosity. And just before I hand over the microphone to Sophia and Richard, Albert Einstein said the following on curiosity. He said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reasons for existing. And James Stephens, who was an Irish novelist, said curiosity will conquer fear more than bravery will. And I'm fortunate enough to be working with a person who's very curious. Her name is Sophia Shilimidi. You'll be seeing her in just a little while. And because of your curiosity, our business is doing extremely well. And I also have another person at home who's very curious, my wife, Christine, and this hasn't helped me a lot. Just joking, but yes. So there are 2 types of curiosity, intrinsic and intentional, and you can be both. Intentional, intrinsic, if you see there, is people who love to learn. They're curious. They want to learn things for their own personal development. They might not use it, but they might will. They might learn about podcasting. They might learn about cooking. And one day it might come handy to them, but they're not learning because they need to use it or they need to make money out of it. And there's also another type of curiosity, which is the intentional, which is developing a wider learning plan. And these individuals hate routine and hate repetition. So they are curious, they want to learn, and they want to grow. So having said all this, it's time to give the microphone over to Sophia and tell us what curiosity means to her. Sophia, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It's interesting what you said, because I was wondering whether the example I have is intrinsic or intentional. So in general, I agree with you. I think curiosity is what is driving us to learn. And when I was thinking about this episode in the shower yesterday, I was thinking about my neighbor when I was a child. And you might have also a neighbor like that knows everything that is happening in the neighborhood, that is secretly, watching on the window to see what is happening. But I think, what I wanted to share is that we have different ways of expressing curiosity. One way is to observe, like my neighbor. Another way is to read books or read in general. And another way is to talk to people. And depending on our personality, we might use one of the 3 more than the other. For me personally, I realized this year that I am expressing my curiosity more with reading and observing, and I'm not talking enough to people. So something to think about. But I will let Mr. Pettinger to explain more about it.
Okay, without further ado, let's bring on Professor Richard Pettinger from University College London. Richard, welcome to the Jumpstart Monday show.
This is a very, very great pleasure to be with you all, and thank you so much indeed, Michael, for the wonderful introduction. Michael and I were introduced, I think it's 9 years ago, by another very, very great mover and shaker in Cyprus, Stylianos Lambrou, and this was one of those great meetings, and it was curious. And it finished up in in working together over the years. So that's an immediate benefit. Over the time also, I should say that my own curiosity probably started. My mum always said that my first word when I was a baby was why. So she would say, eat your greens, why? Don't put your hand on the oven. Why? And it was always that kind of an attitude that I had. And it was probably in the genes as well, because if ever we went out on family trips just to go somewhere, it used to take 3 times as long as for us to get somewhere, because my dad would see something that was interesting to him, and so we'd all have to stop and all of that. Now, whether this is intentional or intrinsic curiosity, of course, it kind of matches up, anyway in the middle, because whatever situation you are in, you find yourself being curious about, what you want to know about, what do you want, what is it that you need to know about, and so there is somewhere in between the mix of all of that, there is a want and a need that is brought to play.
So instead of getting our kids to say mommy or daddy, we should get them to say why. That's the lesson I got.
It will start them off on the path on a path of lifelong learning, and as you quite rightly said, some of this has got to come from within. You can't expect everybody just to say you need to learn this in order to be good at your job, or you need to learn this in order to know something about archaeology. And that's well, one of the first people that I shared an office with at UCL, this guy, his name was Ran Aronoff. Now, he built, he's a world-class architect. For those of you that have been to Stansted Airport flying into England, he built that airport. And he built the British Library near where you come to in the centre of London. He built the Lloyd's building, which is an iconic building in the city of London, where they put all the electrics and the plumbing on the outside, not on the inside. And his advice to everybody was, don't look down, look up. And it was to get people to think, not just what the pavement looks like, but what does the skyline look like? What does the aspect look like? How does everything fit into everything? How does everything fit in to its environment? How does it fit in with the people who work in that environment? And that was it. And again, it was a lesson in curiosity, intentional or intrinsic. It should be. Everybody should have this kind of an attitude. And there is a reverse of this as well, and I'll give you two examples of this. The first is we had a banking crisis 15 years ago from which we are still recovering, believe it or not. And the reason for that is that my bank in England, which is the Halifax, decided that it was no longer a nice regional provider of personal accounts and mortgages. It was going to be a global player. And people said to them, how are you going to get the same recognition in Tuvalu or Vanuatu that you are going to get in England? And they said, don't ask stupid questions. And of course, sure enough, they went bust to the tune of £44 million because they went into something that they knew nothing about as a result of not sticking to what they knew something about. They were not curious about what being a global player is. They were only they were only interested in having the brand, the vanity, if you will, of a global. If you want to succeed at anything, you have got to be curious about what it is that you are going into, what it is. And that comes in the middle of intentional and intrinsic, doesn't it? It's, yeah.
I love the advice that your friend has given you. Don't look down, look up. I wrote it, and I think Sophia thought I was talking to her, but I was just trying to get some great lines, and I loved it a lot. So don't look down, look up. It's amazing. So has curiosity killed the cat? Is there any times that curiosity can kill you?
Oh yes, yeah. This is what people say. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. And the answer to that is actually rubbish. I'm curious about jumping over this cliff to see what happens to me when I fall 300 feet. That is not curious. That is stupidity. So that kind of curiosity won't just kill the cat. It will kill anyone. Your curiosity has got to not just be about, I want to be a global player, or I want to be professor, or I want to be footballer, or anything else. What does it take to make that footballer? David Beckham, who's iconic footballer of the recent past, said, while his friends were going out when he was 10 or 12, going out and, sort of just looning around the town, he was at home watching VHS videos of every football match that he could get his hands on, because he wanted to be a great pleasure. He wanted to be a great player, and this was the route forwards. Other people who say, I'm going to be a great footballer, but do not do the work. You've got to do it. You have got to look at things like this. You have got to look at it from the point of view that, if you want to be good at something, you have first of all to learn what it takes to be that good. Michael and I go back to the point at which Michael said, if you want to learn how to do something, you've got to put in 2,000 hours a year for 10 years. And then you become, you become good at it. And if you keep working like that, then you've got to put in the 2,000 hours a year to stay good at it. That is what curiosity is. It is how you spend those 2,000 hours a year.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I totally agree with what you've said, Richard. And I remember when you were lecturing once at UCL, you told them that David Beckham scored 33 free kicks, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But you know how many free kicks has he taken during when they were working out? And you gave them a number that was huge. To score 33 free kicks and stay in history as one of the best, the Beckham shot, the curler. I remember that.
No, that's right. He himself will say that he took well over 100,000 free kicks in training in order to have scored those 33 free kicks during his career.
Amazing.
That is what is about being curious. And each time Beckham will have taken a practice free kick, it will have gone slightly wrong, and so he would then lean back. I need to hit the ball slightly differently, and it is that kind of that is what curiosity is. Not just I've got talent for this.
But can I do it better?
Talent is the beginning of curiosity. Talent is not is not an end in itself.
Oh, I love this. Talent is the beginning of curiosity.
Yeah.
One question, Richard. Are there any companies from your vast experience, because I've seen you lecturing, mentioning many companies. Are there any companies who promote curiosity?
One of them is one of the most successful companies in the world at the moment. It is Amazon. Be curious is one of their 14 principles of leadership. And you can see where this comes from. This started out as a warehouse and mail order delivery service in Seattle. It had, it's a northwestern city, and in the United States, it had absolutely no affinity when it started out with us or with everybody else who uses it. The reason they have got this big is not by they're monolith and they got there by accident. The reason they've got this big is because they've been curious every time they have moved. What does it take to move into the new market? What does it take to move into Great Britain or Cyprus or France or wherever? What is it that the people want? It is those kinds of questions that they have asked themselves continuously, and that is why they now provide these satisfactory, excellent services that used to be provided locally. Certainly when they came to Great Britain, nobody wanted particularly to choose an American provider over a local British provider. It was the curiosity of the company that led them into their position, and it was the lack of curiosity of the companies that already existed in the market that caused them to fail. You've got to keep on evolving. As Michael said at the start, you've got to keep on asking these questions, getting the answers, evaluating them, asking the next set of questions. It is one of the characteristics, it's one of the traits that makes companies big and great and successful. And the lack of curiosity is one of the traits one of the non-traits that makes companies fail or start to lack, or they throw up their hands and say we can't compete. You haven't tried to find out what it means to compete in that particular basis.
Wow, excellent. I want to ask you one more thing because people are sending in their questions and maybe we
Yes.
can get to those questions. But when you get students at UCL being very curious, and let's say, for example, you have to pause every few minutes to answer because I've seen you answering everything and I like the way you answer things.
Yeah.
I remember once there was a young guy who was playing tennis. He looked like Puyol, the football player at Barcelona. So he came in a bit late inside the course. And then someone asked, do you become great or are you great? You're born great. So then you turn in front of 300 people and you said his name. He was a Spanish guy.
Yeah, Pedro. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Pedro, you play tennis? Yes. You play for the national team? Yes. You play here at UCL? Yes. What time did you wake up today? 5. What time do you wake up every morning? 5. What do you do after that? I work until 7. And that's why I was a bit late coming in. And what do you do that? Then I went go weightlifting. And then you turn to the class and you said, are you born or are you made? So I love the way you preach and not teach. And I love the way you get people to think. So when you get curious students, do they stall you? Do they delay you? Or are you encompassing this and helping the whole class together? Does it frustrate you or does it excite you?
Excites. Yes, of course. The hardest work. I had this overtly wonderful set of students, a very long time ago, who used to sit. They all used to turn up. They all used to turn up, and they all used to sit and listen to everything that I had to say. And I would say, have you got any questions? Have you got any points? To which my answer would be, I will answer any questions that you've got. And they sat silently. And then at the end of that particular course, 10-week course, I got the most amazing ratings, but it had been really, really hard work and the students had not asked questions. Or, goodness knows why. They were just one of those groups that were sort of quiet and polite, I guess. It is so much better when you get people like Pedro, Pedro Pereira, his name was, and he still works in tennis, and so but I mean that particular example was one of those great illustrations of this is what it takes to work, this is what it takes to be successful. And this Pedro was making his way on the club circuit in the tennis world, and this Pedro, he got himself a world ranking at one point, and that was why he was coming into classes late, because he got held up by his trainer or whatever. Didn't matter at all. And it is much better to have somebody like that. If somebody asks you a question, you can always take the question. And you should always take the question because it's important to them that you answer it. If you've got notes that you've got and everything like that, then you can always skim through those or skip through those if you are time limited or something. It's always essential to answer people's questions. They are curious.
And that's great. And one last thing, if you want to say anything on curiosity, it can be an example, it can be one last final word. Before we get Sophia to come up and ask the questions, we're going to get to your questions, guys. Don't worry, we'll extend the time a bit. It's very interesting. And anything, it can be an example, it can be a company, it can be something you want to close with. It's up to you, Richard.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's everything that you should do. It doesn't be be driven by curiosity. I've come across people who this guy worked on the railways that knew years ago and had the opportunity to try to talk to because the train had been cancelled, and so I had to wait half an hour for the next one. And said, "Oh, it must be a fascinating job." And he said, "No." I said, "Oh, but you see so much." No. But you see all these wonderful trains going through the station from Germany and France and everywhere else. No, I'm not interested. I just sort of thought, how long have you worked on the rail? 23 years. Boring. Not surprised with an attitude like that. The reverse of that, of course, is that we're now in a world where every company is entitled to expect that their staff are curious. Your organization is going to develop so much more quickly. People are going to get so much more out of their jobs, and you are going to get you're just going to get an organization that performs on a human level out of all recognition to what it would perform is that if you just kept it as a bland and inert corporate setup.
So thank you very much, Richard. Richard Pettinger, Professor Richard Pettinger, told us that if you are curious, you might get killed once, but if you're not curious, you'll get killed for sure many times over. He also said that whatever you do, whichever business you're in, you have to be passionate, love what you do, and at least show some curiosity. Even the great David Beckham was studying how to become a great football player, not only waiting in line. He says talent is just the beginning of curiosity. It's not the end. So if you're talented and watching in, be curious. And as Sophia has said, you can read, you can observe, or you can talk to people. If you do all three, you'll be an even better professional and a human being. So let's bring Sophia up to ask the questions. Sophia, welcome.
Hi, and we have many questions in the audience. I will select the two that I think they are very important to talk about. The first one is from Sadia Shah, and he's asking, could curiosity come across as ignorance in the workplace? Do you seem stupid when you ask too many questions? I think that's what he wants to say.
Satya, yeah, what a great pleasure to see to see you up here. Yes, I mean, Satya is an old friend of Michael and me as well. Yeah, the answer is yes, of course it can. And you have to rise above that and say, the reason I am asking questions is because I don't know the answer, so clearly I am ignorant. And that's the same, so everywhere. It's actually about getting over that. It has to be underpinned by a culture of, that kind of sort of questioning and opening and so on. Yeah. Similarly, in the education sector, these students tend to hide their curiosity. How do you excite their levels of curiosity? By engaging and engaging and engaging. And there is no other way. You have to do everything that the you do all of that. And that is what you're at university for. I had a student years ago. And I can't remember what it was about. I said to the student answer, I said, quite simple, it was a bad idea and it did not work. And the student said, yes, but it could have worked. So we had to go around the houses all again. But of course, what he was doing was taking full advantage of everything that was put in front of him to question, to identify, to build his own knowledge, and so on. You've got to look at things in that kind of a way. You put yourself in the position that we put ourselves in. We are there to answer questions.
And if I can add on what you have said, which is amazing, I have to say that Sadia has flown all the way in to come to Lausanne to watch a lecture I was doing on public speaking and spent 8 hours, in the best 8 hours, coming from London to Lausanne and watching the whole course. And he's a lecturer, he's a professor, he's a trainer. I mean, the guy has come in to satisfy his curiosity, to learn and be more and become more. So I take my hat off to him. So he was there asking the questions. So it says a lot about him, Richard.
Yeah. Although, and me too. Yes. Satya has worked the cutting edge of business and engineering and IT and communications education for a very long time. He's major authority on this. Yeah. And the reason, like you say, the reason is because he keeps curious. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. One more question. Gayan is asking, how can the culture of curiosity be developed in organizations?
The answer is you've just got to do it. And you can start people off with small beginnings through attitude surveys, staff meetings, and things like that. And you can get them to say, don't say, whatever you're saying around the water cooler, stay in a staff meeting. And if you think that something is rubbish, then tell me it is rubbish. And I'll either explain why it's not, or else I will give ground. If you explain it to me properly, I will give ground and I will, and I will change my attitude, of course. Yeah, but you've got to, you've just got to do it. The only way, you can't do it by email. You've got to do it by going around and talking to people. You can't. And again, it's it's an example. Marks and Spencer, which is a great British institution. The Marks family, who founded the company, Michael Marks and Marcus Seifert, when they were chief executives of the company, they would go round to the stores at least once a year. And Michael Marks especially said, right, would you say to the store manager, right, wonderful to meet you. I am now going to go and meet the shelf fillers, the till checkers, the stockroom people, the drivers, the people who are bringing the deliveries in, because those are the people that I want to talk to.
Excellent. Very good. Sophia, are we okay? We have some more questions. We can send them to Richard. He can answer them for us. So we keep it short and brief. As we say, we don't want to surpass the 20-minute mark, but we've gone 25 because it's very, very interesting, Richard. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. We had another show with Richard many years ago. Remember the Ask Virardi show, directly from University College London? Really. So thank you very much. If you have watched this and enjoyed it, please share this episode with your friends. If you're watching it recorded, still you can ask your question and Richard will be more than happy to answer it. And we will be back next Monday with yet another power skill, and it's a surprise which one it will be. Just keep an eye on what's coming. Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you very much, Richard. You've been great, both of you. Thank you.